by rail. For factories. For its big business. It's the kind of a city an enemy would want to knock out. A spot where he might drop an egg. An atomic egg.
What an omelet that'd make.
Yeah, with us in it, maybe.
But not necessarily. Look, I won't kid you about the A-bomb. I've seen what it can do in Japan, Bikini, and Eniwetok. It's deadly. It's like a woman.
That I'd have to see.
I mean, never underestimate its power. Don't lose your head, use it. Figure that an atomic bomb dropped on a large modern city like this might kill 50,000 people. That figure might be cut down considerably if folks were properly schooled in individual protection. Handle yourself right and you've got a good chance of coming through. Do the wrong things and you've got a future like an ice cube in a hot toddy. Get panicky and get hurt. Forget about such things as the proper outfits to wear. Light, loose clothes to protect you against flash heat. The enemy was thoughtless. He didn't send you a formal announcement of the big blowout. And you're no quick change artist. Suppose you're taken by surprise. And while we're supposing, let's go all the way. Figure that this is the real article, not just a model. And you're there. Okay, you're in this town and you're on it. Making the best of those 3 rights they can't take away from you. You're enjoying life. You're enjoying liberty. You're pursuing happiness. Whatever shape it comes in. You're doing all right. When the other guy's around and he means business, so get going. Remember, you're off base. You've just got time to save yourself. Drop whatever you're doing. Find the nearest hole and make like a mole. A subway's okay. Stay out of flimsy buildings. They give bad protection. A basement's fine, preferably under a solid, well-constructed building. And the safest positions are near strong supporting columns or next to the walls, protected from falling bricks and 2x4s. If there's no underground shelter handy, pick a room in a good building, close to the ground. It ought to be airtight and light-proof as possible, with the doors shut, windows closed, and blinds drawn. Back in 1940, London survived a terrific blasting from the Nazi bombers. And one of the reasons was that folks did just what I'm telling you now. It was pretty crowded down in those shelters.
So, what about the fallout shelters? Okay, I got a chuckle. The dude closing the window, the blinds, the curtains, locking the door. Keep that in mind. I was recently looking through some chats online. My neighborhood has it's like a listserv, and they have a chat room, and they're all talking about the things that go on in our neighborhood, pretty much. And something caught my eye, and I kind of wish I hadn't read it, they go to a special folder. I don't want them in my inbox because there's too many conversations. But sometimes I learn neat things that are going on in the neighborhood that way. So it turns out that someone asked, what about the fallout shelters in DC? Do you think they still work? Has anyone gone out to check them? And and I have to say, I want to just declare now that I was born at the very edge of the end of the baby boomer generation, and right going straight into the first year of the Gen X. I'm declaring myself a divorce from the baby boomers. Done. How is it that their collective memories, and mind you that the people who are asking these questions, I think most of them are aging in place in a city that's a huge target, and I'll get to that in a moment. And it's freaking me out. It's just freaking me out because all that remains of the fallout shelters are the signs. They're rather quaint if you're into history, like I am. I've lived part of it, 70s and 80s and part of the 90s. That was still the Cold War. And having been on military bases, we have those fallout shelter signs on certain buildings. I'm not going to pull up that picture now, but maybe I should. It's just freaking me out because this conversation keeps going back and forth about, and I saw a sign at X, Y, and Z school, and that was placed in the 1960s. And then you got people who actually just want to reminisce about the damn signs going up. And maybe you bought a picture of JFK before he was assassinated, standing outside of a school where naturally there was a fallout shelter sign right behind him affixed to the building. I'm not sure what the charm is. When I was younger, I thought that seeing the signs was more of a reminder of how close humanity might have been to completely wiping itself out. And it's kind of a sobering thought for a young person. At the same time, the 80s and 90s were pretty exciting because, hey, life is still good, and hey, we don't know what will happen next. Is that element of surprise that made it even more terrifying and exciting at the same time. But moving away from that mindset, back to my friends here, the neighborhood is just chit-chatting mindlessly about the fallout shelters, and then it just goes into some romanticism about the signs throughout the city. And I see them all the time, walking around the city, shopping, and I know which buildings have them. And it's just it's part of the furniture. The reality is none of these buildings, I would say practically none of these buildings would offer much in the form of shelter. The shelter initially, yes, but it will not protect from radiation. Most of the buildings in DC are undergoing a lot of renovations, mainly masonry. You'll see in scaffoldings all over the city. People working on pointing, is that what they call it? Pointing the bricks, and that's a big labor. And I see it all the time. And I know that buildings are not warm enough or cool enough when they need to be, which means insulation is not good. Radiation will seep through doors that are really old from back in the day, and some of the buildings are well preserved, but when it comes to a nuclear attack, no, there's going to be no hope whatsoever for any of us to be able to do anything to keep from being killed. So the level of I don't want to call it innocence. How naive can we be? So I'm really divorcing myself from this generation. I'm not understanding why anyone would be concerned about the fallout shelters. I would not go into any of these buildings. I would figure if I knew it was coming in my direction, I would just put hands on hips and just let it hit me, because it would be very quick. And I would be definitely in the area, most of the city, but a nuclear device would definitely take out a good chunk of the city very quickly. And mind you, today's Friday, and this is the longest day of the year, right? The beginning of summer, the summer equinox, is that what it is? So we had a really nasty storm on Thursday, and Thursday it looked like something like it was a shock wave. The winds were just that bad, where trees were uprooted. I think a building in Baltimore fell down. It's probably under construction. It's no longer under construction. They need to start over. I think just toppled it. So it was pretty nasty storm, and it just hit in a matter of hours, and it was done. And suddenly the weather was perfect. So I'm imagining DC weather patterns mixed in with an airburst attack, for example. And how far is that going to carry? Is that just going to go right into Maryland or into Virginia, parts of Virginia? And DC will be a big crater. So I started to play around with some tools. I didn't want to even go back onto the chat and actually participate on account that it just kept going back and forth about just basically historical or anecdotal conversations about these damn signs. But with the truth of the matter is, the issue is maybe some of these people are the ones thinking that Reagan was crazy back in the day because he was pushing to go into research and development of SDI. Israel now has it, which is the Iron Dome, and it's pretty useful. We have something similar in the Iraq War. It's called CRAM. The Navy uses it on ships, and it shoots down flying bombs. You got your mortars and rocket fire, and it shoots them down pretty well, pretty effectively. They made one version to adapt it to land-based security systems, defense systems that work really well on the ground. I have experienced that, and it just shoots him out of the sky. So Reagan was not so crazy after all. He was a little bit ahead of time. Like, at some point, we're going to be fighting over space. But what about DC? What about the fallout shelters? And when I hear that, we're not thinking, big dreams anymore. We're thinking that 60 or 70-year-old concepts are going to work with today's weapons. And I think even a school child can probably figure out that that's not going to be the case. So I decided to start playing with some online tools just to see. I know I'm in a kill zone. It doesn't matter, but provided if it happens, when it happens at all, if I were to be in the area, then that'll be it. And I went to nuclearsecrecy.com. And this is a fun tool. Let me share my screen. There we are. I'm hoping you can see it. And let me see. Let me make sure that having technical difficulties here. Let me stop sharing for a moment so that I can do this. And I hope you can see it. Yes, I did it correctly finally. Too many things going on here. So We come up here to nuclearsecrecy.com, to the nuke map, and you select your city. So let's pick the one here. So if you're in New York or any of these places, I've been to Islamabad. That should be interesting to see what kind of damage it would cause. So I'm just looking to see what warhead yield kilotons. The preset. I'm just going to select the preset because it's here. Improvise nuclear terrorism. Let's make it small. I could get really much bigger here, but I don't even want to go into that. Let's do some advanced stuff. I want to do airburst, and I want casualties and the radioactive fallout. What else can I select here? I want to maximize here. Yeah, I don't want to give it too many parameters. I'm going to keep it here, not make it more complex. I want to see the crater. Mushroom cloud dimensions. I already know what that is, but I'll run it again. Here's the simulation. Let's take a look. It did not give me casualties, so I have to fix that. Sickness. Let's see, 3rd degree. Dry wood, yeah, usually burns. Let's see if it'll let me. I don't know why it's not giving me fatalities and injuries. Initially, it gave me the fatalities to about 83,000 people and over 100,000 casualties. So we're talking about possibly walking wounded. We don't want to be them. This is pretty big. This is city. You got the city is 4 quadrants. To down here, I don't know if you can see my pointer. That's Virginia, and up here to the right, it's part of Maryland, going into Prince George's County and Montgomery County and Arlington's Fairfax County. This will take out part of the Pentagon, actually. That's in that radius, and that's a pretty big crater. And this is just a small device. A 10 kiloton. And this is Goodbye Zoo. Did you guys like the little visit film at the National Zoo? You saw the pandas. There you go. No more pandas because they're in that area right there. So this whole radiation. This is pretty concentrated. Like, yeah, at this point. You don't want to be alive in this area. So this is light blast damage radius. It's going into Virginia and Maryland and these neighborhoods. These are all neighborhoods that are pretty packed. This is city and, like I said, Pentagon, and then this all industrial and commercial and neighborhoods. I guess some neighborhoods are nearby, but this is a high volume for traffic and human and vehicular traffic and Hyattsville. This whole area is definitely going into it. That part of the town is definitely, that's a neighborhood. Those are suburbs and some commercial areas. So what about the fallout shelters? It just, maybe if I just click it here, I'll recalculate. I put too many parameters. So now you're looking at, so for this scenario, I don't know why it changed initially. I changed something. I added more parameters to it. So it's still the fatalities are going to be pretty high. You want to be in fatalities block right here, not the injuries. Because injuries can be long-term, a long-term death, basically from radiation sickness. So this from an airburst. Let's see, we just change it to a surface detonation. And it's about the same thing. So these buildings are just not going to survive. especially any these places. Like you go out to Columbia Heights where they have the Howard University and all that. A lot of those buildings are newer, but I don't think anyone builds with the intention of protecting human life or property from a nuclear blast. I really don't think that's even possible at this point. It just doesn't make any sense. And just even talking about the shelters when we should all be discussing what's the battle plan, because then you have the problems with the weather, how far the wind could carry that, if it's raining, how many people are outside, the time of day that the attack occurs. And first responders, if you hit in the middle of the day where there's heavy traffic and you're stuck someplace halfway across town, EMS may be activated, but what about EMS? What about the EMP? There's no comms, right? No communications. So we really don't have a well-practiced generation. There may be like people right after World War II. Yeah, we knew Japan, so we knew that that stuff was really dangerous, and it seems really obsolete. The mitigating actions of hiding, teaching kids to dive under a desk in school and so forth, or going into a basement. It's a whole lot better than being out in the middle of the street, depending on how one of these devices hit. So we're not a really well-practiced population right now with all this technology, talking about AI, how it's replacing jobs and humans maybe become obsolete. And I'm thinking here, rather than discuss where we can hide, how can we start generating ideas on how to find ways to protect ourselves? And we're not well practiced on how to survive in the first place, which is why I'm saying that most people are probably better off dying in the initial wave rather than surviving it, because the mindset is just not going to be there to survive. I mean, some people might be that kind of person that they're just going to go into the fight and then just stick it out. But most people are going to get bogged down by what just happened, and where do they go? And when there's no planning, then you have panic. You're going to have shortages of food. Food will be contaminated. There's a lot of moving parts. So, yeah, that generation did have a little bit of an edge over what we have today, because if you think about it, we don't practice. No, I'm not diving under a desk. But I have to have some presence of mind as to what would I do if I were in the city and I just happened to survive. Can I go beyond just I'm alive in the moment, but where do I go from here? So I don't think that we have the psychological hardiness to consider these options and for survival. And so I went from just kind of laughing it off to being a little angry that this is all they're talking about. Maybe it's just a way of passing the time and just kind of just let it roll. That idea that, we're going through this all over again, the possibility of a nuclear conflict. So we shall see soon where that goes. But it still brings it to the table. This is a topic that needs to be discussed. What do we do? How do we protect families and what property we have and assets? None of the way you think as some business talk. I mean, things that are of value. If you don't have access to an ATM to get cash, how do you pay for supplies? When we got hit last year with the hurricanes, Tennessee, North Carolina, still recovering from that. And I've been in those areas vacationing my way back through through North Carolina from Florida. At some point, I went on a road trip, and I know the entire area. They used to be beautiful with the lake, and it's all gone. And were they prepared for that? I mean, I can only prepare for so much, but where we live and where we build things, it should be always considered. How do we protect it in case of something catastrophic hits? So this isn't about the usual talk that I give about, how to prepare continuity of operating a business. How do you do the continuity of operating one's life? You got family, if you got little ones, you got the elderly. How do you provide? Do you have medication? Do you have everything you need to get you by until things somewhat stabilize or normalize? It happens all the time. There's no refrigeration. Some places here because of storm yesterday lost power. Where I'm at, no power loss, but that storm was really fierce. It was like I was really happy to be indoors because it looked like something really huge, and it hit just as quickly as it hit. It quickly it left the area. Like I said, it cleared the area. The temperatures dropped, and suddenly it's a beautiful day the next day. But when something like this strikes, we're not thinking always preparing. Like, I'm not going to lock my doors and the windows because if it's a nuclear blast, it's not going to help. But actually putting the layers of the blinds and some sort of a barrier and the curtains and whatnot from fragmentation. I mean, it's gonna be a glass window. There are a lot of things to consider. Nuclear attack is not enough time to board up your place before a hurricane hits. So I don't think we are a very educated society right now to deal with what's going on in between Iran and Israel right now. That could just light the fuse. That blowback is actually going to reach across the oceans. That's what I'm saying. So the talk is naive about the fallout shelters. It's well-intentioned. I'll give them that much, but it was naive. It was a naive back then. I think the government probably already know that these nuclear blasts were more than likely to kill more people than they told the public about. They already have some sort of study. They already have some sort of idea how many people. Like, I just ran this simulation for you on screen, and frankly, is it scary? It is if we're not willing to be involved, and other than just chatting it up online. And I started to look at some of the places that I know I've seen fallout shelter signs, and some are not accessible, by the way, because time passes and these are properties that be hotels. This is not a practiced, well-conditioned population. We are not, this including myself, I'm not part of a well-conditioned population that would actually manage to survive, or at least find some sort of a shelter situation so they can continue on. So government has battle plans because something still has to keep running. But for the rest of us, we should be thinking and demanding that as part of a national security posture, that we engage in beyond the conversation about sheltering and actually preparedness. So all the people that laughed about the preppers, how they're nuts and they go on TV and they usually assign like Southern accents for some reason. I don't know why that is. I got relatives who have Southern accents, by the way. I don't know why the mockery, but when I put in plain English, when shit hits the fan, it's that person with the accent and that bunch of supplies in their basement or their national shelter. They actually have a plan that they practiced, and they laid it all out, and they made the decision to survive. If something happened, I have something that will become the currency when all the lights are out. I'll tell you a quick story. My brother in Puerto Rico, when Hurricane Maria hit, and it destroyed part of our parents' home and all that, and he was living there at the time, and he he couldn't go to work, when he was still a musician. And the few times I could get him on the phone, he said that people were lining up like 3-4 days after the storm hit because they finally got some power restoration to certain areas. He was in the suburbs, out on the countryside, like on a small island, but out you would say the sticks. People were completely isolated. No communications, the electricity's down, and the roads were not passable. So he ended up they were actually looking for volunteers, security companies, to gather up people who can carry arms and have firearms licenses, and he was one of them, to actually post guards outside of ATMs that had power restored to them so people can go line up for hours and get cash. And as well as I do, that people get their tempers flaring, and they're only survival mode. They're scared. They don't have any planning done, and there's going to be fights. Prepare for some violence and hostility. And he was excited about it, but most people will be scared. Those are really scary circumstances. You don't know what's going to happen next. And find something. I have a plan. Find something that will give you an edge. What can you trade? Because currency may not be viable. People may not be taking cash. Like what happened in North Carolina, some of the areas that businesses simply just opened up because they had no choice but to open up the coffee shops or whatever, and they let people in to help themselves to things they needed, because that's the humane thing to do. And people are going to get caught off guard and not be able to have access to cash. And that's something that's forgivable, because this is truly an emergency, and this is when people pitch in and help each other out. And communities usually band together, but in cities, that's not the same mentality. Just asking a little bit on kind of a low tone, well, what about the shelters? If there's some presence of mind in asking, but then there's no more discussion beyond that. It was more of a, like I said, an anecdotal discussion than it was about maybe we should have a meeting and discuss what are we facing. Let's look at some scenarios. How do we demand that government have some sort of preparedness initiatives to help us get better organized and help each other out. Beyond the big one, something really big that will wipe out everything for many miles. That's different. But still, you have the outlier areas that will be able to come in. They may not be able to come in and help. So, if anyone knows what the farthest place I can move to is, being at ground zero is no fun, but it's something that it does need to be discussed. And I'm mocking it a little bit. I'm still kind of not happy about not looking for. I'm looking for the leadership. I guess does it fall on me? Does it fall on this next generation, or do we all have to stand up and actually see it for what it is? We are ill prepared for what could happen, and we really need to address that right away. I think that it's safe to say that we definitely need to do what we have to do to protect ourselves. So I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget to help me out and click like and subscribe. That would be awesome. I hope you enjoy your first day of real summer. It's gonna be a blast. I have a feeling about that. Don't you? I can try it. Don't run for the cloud. You just die a pile of dust. Don't go in that school for shelter. If it's old this time, you'll be crushed by no projector. It's no use. Stop. Enjoy the suntan. The warm glow of extinction. There's no escape. Just wait for the flash. Look into the light.